Good evening. My name is Peter Walker, and most of you know me as the co-organizer for the meetup group. However, tonight I'll be doing a little presentation on a subject that has really kind of taken off in the last, probably since March. I've noticed that there's been a great uptick in what's going on with AI. I guess the main question to ask is, has anybody worked with AI in the past few years?
Does IFTT count?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so there's a few of you that have worked with AI, and I guess the first thing to kind of show you guys is the hype cycle. There's always, you know, there are some guys who will run across and say, yeah, I know about AI. I used to do that 20 years ago. And I know what it's all about. It's all the same. It's all the same thing. I don't even want to look at it anymore, right? That's because they had the hype cycle. They've gone through, the early stages. They have the peak expectations, and then they went into disillusionment. Probably a little bit of sarcasm there, but that's the basic cycle. The other thing I should tell you is that I'm not an expert in AI. What I'm basically doing is starting to get deeper into AI, noticing what's going on. And if anybody has any comments, feel free to say. Feel free to speak.
So you're in the slope of enlightenment?
Actually, I think there's two slopes. There's the slope that, here. We move on to the next one. They have where the modern, I guess 2016, where it is right here, where they have the mass media hype begins. So it's just on the peak of inflated expectations. So you have, so you have things like the IBM Watson, right? That's from the first wave, and now the second wave is coming down. Peak of inflated expectations. You get the early success stories, and then you get scores of failures. And but I think that the earlier stage, the first wave, like from 20 years ago, you get the slope of enlightenment. You're getting some of that's sort of happening. In the second generation, the products that are kind of in that stage are 3D printing. You know how 3D printing has kind of come down, so that you can go down to Micro Center and $600 you can get yourself a 3D printer. The Gartner hype cycle for emerging tech. This one has a number of technologies that are here that I'll be talking about. You have the IoT platform. It's right here. It's on the cusp of peak expectations. We went to the AT&T Foundry. Did many of you guys go to the AT&T Foundry this year? Yeah, that's there is an if component to that. That's part of the AI if this thing. Yeah, you also have the smart advisors, the Internet of Things, wearables. Wearables are huge right now. The hybrid cloud computing is going to the trial of an augmented reality. Although augmented reality is sort of it's kind of doing an upswing. Augmented reality, Pokemon Go, that game, and down here with virtual reality, which is a little further along, and then of course 3D printing. This is a little list of the emerging technologies that are that are happening. Quantum computing, still in its early stages. The brain-computer interface, still in its early stages. Biochips. Not all of these will make it through.
What do you mean by that? Not all of them will probably make it through.
As they're going up the slope, and when they start going into the
I mean, outside the metaphor.
yeah, because usually where most of them wipe out is right here, when they're going down to the trough, whether they don't get enough financing, they want to compete because there's always limited resources, right? So the investors might say, oh well, yeah, we've been there before, but we're looking at this new hot thing, and so all the money, you get a couple $1 billion, it goes from one thing to the other. A few $1 billion.
What's an example of that?
What would be an example of that? It's a good question. In the first wave, they were telling us that, oh yes, well, pretty soon the computers will be smarter than us. You'll have machines that will be like person of interest. Have you ever seen person of interest? Where you get the machine and then you get Samaritan. The two play off against each other. That they're watching everything and they're in control of everything. That promise was actually made in the 1990s. That once everything gets up, that's going to be happening, right? It could be sooner than you think. You say, oh yes, it could be Y2K. Talking about most people say,
Was there any kind of funding for that in order to trail off? I mean,
IBM Watson.
well,
Well, in the same.
but IBM Watson was actually a thing, and
You can only do one thing.
continued it. Well,
Yeah.
it answers questions.
That's right.
But you can ask any question, not necessarily get a meaningful answer about it. Something like, I was thinking maybe something like video telephones. They kept being promoted and promoted. We're going to have this any day now, from starting about 1965 to, but it was
The Jetsons.
which came along there, but the bandwidth to have a consumer video technology just never did materialize until
I think technology and the computing resource, or internet resource, dictates those advancement, because in old days there is a video conferencing, but it does exist in the conference room in an enterprise. But now we have enough bandwidth to connect to each other, and enough computing power to render the video, and enough computing power to compress the video. In the old days, there is no way that the video 640 by 480 can be compressed in a small piece. So it's basically any data like AI is based on the computing. AI history is basically very gets older, right? It basically goes back all the way back to Lisp and the Prolog. AI machine, Lisp machine was popular in the 80s and 90s, and at that time machine was so expensive and only few people can use it. But now, everybody can use it if we want to use it. And then language is becoming a more, readily available, like R or Python, all those, AI libraries are available. And then now there's a TensorFlow. You can do you can pass the big data left and right.
Yeah.
So, and then now Google is providing the hardware for the TensorFlow. So the passing the big data is much easier now. So now, where we are going from here?
Yes. Okay, so why is AI taking off? That's probably why AI is taking off. It's a lot more horsepower.
Yeah.
Before there wasn't the horsepower before, so to do a lot of just to do a lot of things that they wanted to do. If you want to get into picking up information. This is NVIDIA's Jetson chip, and so it's specifically designed for AI automation applications and robotics and medicine. And this is IBM's 4096 core synapses chip, and it shows the processor. It shows two processors here. It shows the cool chip, which is the synapses, and the hot FPGA chips that's feeding it data. So chips are getting a lot cooler and a lot more cores they're fitting on. Processes, the CPU processes, take computing beyond the classic Moore's Law era. I kind of see, when I started here, I guess most of you can kind of see. I was right around the IBM PC in the 80s. I was the Atari 1040 ST guy who was doing video editing.
Video toaster.
Yeah, we were doing and music, a lot of MIDI music. So basically, this is this says mouse brain is where it's at, and so to get to the human brain, there has to be a bit of a breakthrough. Machine intelligence. We have the landscape here. We have the core technologies and the usual suspects right here, the artificial intelligence. You have the IBM Watson that kind of leads. You also have the deep learning, machine learning, predictive APIs is another hidden part, and speech recognition. Rethinking in the enterprise, so you have like marketing. Marketing seems to be the big push right now. Marketing and chatbots. Chatbots are really coming, and the personal assistants, of course, Siri and the other big one is fraud detection. There's been a lot of money being spent, whether it's the guys who are doing micropayments themselves in European banks. They made leakages and they find out that, wait a minute, we just lost 45 million over the last 6 months. But there's no big thing. It's just a whole bunch of little micropayments that take $2, $3, $5, $4.95 out of accounts. And then rethinking industries. Of course, medical is the big one that a lot of people are knowing about. On both the front end, where you the patient contact, and then the back end with diagnosis. I'm going into that a little bit further. Rethinking humans, it's robotics and augmented reality, and it's supporting technologies, which is all data collection and the cloud. Basically, data prep and the hardware. Now we're getting into, it's kind of branching off into some smaller things. Assistant intelligence, where things are, the basic tasks are done more cheaply. You get the medical, the wearables, and with the wearables, if you ever have to go to an ER, what the doctors are doing now is that if you go in and let's say you have tightness of the chest, you're probably having a heart attack. But you may not be having a heart attack. And if that doctor sees that you have a wearable, he'll immediately go for that data. Because that data basically tells you whether from the last week or from the last 30 days, all the data. So he knows, he can look at the data, he will then he'll notice your heart rate. Okay, when did it start acting funny? Oh, it started acting funny 7 hours ago. So it's going to be quite different from when it was 3 days ago. Right? It could be heartburn. It could be heart attack. So that could decide on what he's going to do and when he can either send you home with something or admit you into the hospital. but the time period is a lot shorter if you have that word, probably within 30 minutes, whereas before it used to take 3-4 hours. Augmented intelligence helps people make more effective decisions based on their circumstances. The example I have here is a bank loan officer accessing credit risk. So let's say someone goes into the bank and the answer yes to every question. You've ever heard of liar loans? Some people just lie. And so accessing the credit risk, you might be going through your data and all of a sudden your personal bankruptcy pops up. That's going to reduce risk for him. So that's so when they're making the decisions, that's how they're using AI and autonomous intelligence, where the human is no longer in charge and the machine takes over. Now I don't know about you guys, but a driverless car, anything that does not have a steering wheel that I can take control, or someone who I trust can take control, I'm not getting into that vehicle. So that's something that's, I guess it's for people born after 1980. That'd be a fair assessment. Everybody born before 1980, it's a no-go, but people born after 1980, it's a possibility. Autonomous intelligence. Let me get into deep learning. Okay, the AlphaGo beat the world's best Go players in 2015, which is another, I guess it's a milestone, because when was Kasparov and Big Blue? That was 97? Yeah, that was 97. So now it's gone from chess to Go. It took it 18 years, 19 years to do the Go. And then of course, remember this, IBM Watson on Jeopardy. It beat all the good Jeopardy players. The thing about the IBM Watson and AlphaGo is that it's really, although it can beat the players, that's the only thing it can really do. It can't go and say, okay, we play chess.
Yeah, I mean, what I heard about this little gambit they did, they preloaded the data that they were going to be exposed to, or the answers they would be exposed to. So, it kind of had an edge over the other players in that it was ready.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like it got to study before the game actually took place. Whereas the humans were just a wide range of knowledge, and then they immediately had to respond to whatever popped up. They didn't know what the answers were going to be to come up with the proper questions and response.
True.
I think it's pretty good in Watson. And last week they visited our company. I was there. So the director of cognitive consulting from IBM. So now they set up a total big wing of their own department in Watson. So you have Watson Security, Watson Healthcare, Watson Services. There are, I think, 50 services if you go online and search Watson Cloud Services. And also there's a Watson Lumix, which is for government and all that stuff. So to your point, saying that Watson only can do that, no, it can do a lot of things.
Yeah,
the way they're selling it is they're even selling the cognitive aspect. So they have this public knowledge of Watson, which it can learn everything about all those wikis and whatever you teach the public knowledge, like whatever is on internet, it keeps learning. And what they did is, if you are a company in medical and you want to, some terms in your company would completely mean different than what it means in the public domain, right? So they have a private domain knowledge of neural networks that is created just for you. So you can teach it whatever you want to teach for 6 months. So this is what they proposed. They said you have to teach it for 6 months, your domain, and also keep your guy who actually it has to replace next to it, and see how it reacts to it. If it almost matches to the same performance of that guy, then you can let that guy go. So anyway, that's the selling model right now, and I was surprising to see a team of people coming and selling their AI. So
Yeah, I think in medicine it's oncology,
oh yeah,
and they're also were selling cybersecurity.
yeah, security threat modeling and all that stuff. Yeah. They came for us. I think they came for transportation and that domain and security, both the domains they were selling.
Yeah. Very cool. And this one is really the first one, which kind of started off. Have many of you seen this? Had to deal with this program?
Visical?
Visical, yeah. Visical. So I put in a little quote from Dan Bricklin. How he went about it, and 'cause that's really the first one. One key point that I found in all of this is humans don't like to be told what to do by a robot. Actually, the other thing too is that no oracle. The end user doesn't want to be perceived as an oracle of being the one that kind of has the answers. I should say more the end user is having to know all the answers. So what's the point of having a robot if it does the stuff? And the example that I used here was an MD diagnosis. And what's been, if you have, let's say, two systems, you have system A and you have system B, okay? System A has a 90% accuracy rate. It's the best in the business. It takes your user data, your medical data, and then it comes back to you and says, you have this, but the only things you get are the Latin name and a Wikipedia link. You can't ask any questions, and you have no clue on how it got to the diagnosis. You have System B. System B has an 85% rate of accuracy. Still pretty high, but it's not as high as the other one. It takes your medical data, and then it comes back to you, and it says, yeah, you probably have this. We noticed that when you did your labs, you passed a certain threshold, and looking at your family history, we noticed that these relatives had these same conditions. Usually when that happens, in most cases, the patient said, well, wait a minute. I forgot to tell you about bang, right? So in other words, System A has no bedside manner, and System B, of course, because you can ask questions and get a response and so on, has a bedside manner. So it's like, which system are you gonna go with? That's kind of a main takeaway of what's going on.
Yeah, that's been part of the acceptance of neural networks and the deep learning has allowed them to impose a certain amount of structure so that people at least believe they know something about how it's arriving at the answers instead of just a big matrix of apparently arbitrary values they can for the fully connected whatever they can see. Okay, this flows through here and here, and it builds up on these individual components and goes from there. And of course, the extra machine capacity to handle lots and much bigger data sets in shorter periods of time, so you get really useful answers didn't hurt either. But
the interaction.
yeah,
The interaction.
I would say that's not much different than human interaction. I mean, because if you had a guy come in who's very arrogant, very condescending, and says, yes, it's this answer,
Mhm.
and you'd be like, you know, why? You know, you want to know why. But if you had another person come in and kind of lead you through their diagnosis, then you'd be more accepting of what they came up with. Even though the arrogant guy may have been spot on, you know, he just came off bad. You know, it's social interaction.
Social interaction and trust. Trust. So in the marketing terms, we have the next brand frontier. And it seems like we're going through a third wave in communications. First wave is with paradigm shifts, and the first wave was the gold rush for websites. You know, where if you knew what HTML5 was, you can get yourself a gig, a few gigs. Wave number 2 is mobile apps, and the businesses popped up to develop them. The iPhone changed everything. And so now we're going through a third wave, which seems to be chat solutions that are emerging in business, affecting customer service, call centers, and it'll be all customer touch points with brands. It seems to be going. We have the usual suspects in the messaging app. You know, Messenger, WhatsApp is pretty good. It's the biggest app in China. WhatsApp. And so what's happening is that the services are sort of meshing together, and the APIs are starting to talk to each other. So when you're in Square, you can send cash to somebody else with Snapchat cash. Or if you're in Messenger, you can just call for a ride for Uber. So now we're getting a mesh of APIs. And of course, the big one is chatbots. A little definition of chatbots there. How people are using WeChats. People can take actions like texting in questions in English or whichever language is understood. And then instead of having to scour websites for information, because of course a lot of great inventions comes as a result of wanting to save time, but then there's the other side of the coin, you're just lazy. When I just have this guy, I hate doing the same thing all at the same time. Why don't I just write a script and have the script? And so chatbots will, and so what they're looking at is basically one-to-one conversations with consumers. And then other uses in marketing, in the recommendations, the content curation. The example I have here is Under Armour with IBM Watson. And what they're doing is that they're using the database with third-party data and research. So let's say, for example, well, right now we have the Olympics, right? So let's say you want to get really good at, let's say, marathons. Okay, you want to run a marathon or a half marathon. Using the Under Armour, you have a little dashboard here. And so what it does is that it takes your data and then it goes up and it looks over the third-party data and the research, and it comes back with a plan for you, an optimized plan for you to get to your goal. Search engines, Google with RankBrain, pretty obvious. They'll have Penguin still causes chills in some people, the algorithms. Preventing fraud and database breaches. I think the last big one was Neiman Marcus, because they just had usernames and passwords as protection. So, when they start to put on the AI, finds anomalies in behavior. Of course, the banks are using this too. So, the one that always used to come up with me, was I would be. A transaction would go through in Acapulco, Mexico. I'd never been to Acapulco, Mexico. And so I noticed this, and I'd go right to the bank. I'd say, yeah, I just had this transaction 18 minutes ago in Acapulco. And no, Scotty did not beam me over. Right, so, yeah, the the banks should certainly be using this. Social semantics, Facebook AI research, basically learning patterns. While Facebook is getting all the recognition and all the promotion, I'd like to see if they're still behind Amazon, because Amazon has a heck of a lot of information on patterns. They have buying patterns. These guys are into.
Is that recognizing patterns is not buying patterns, right? They're talking about visual and audio.
Which one? Facebook?
No, when you say deep learning, it is basically using how the brain processes visual recognition and how it does the audio and video. They replicate it in software. That's deep learning. The definition of deep learning is basically using the same biological patterns, replicate it, and they do it. So even Watson and the kid, they were trying to sell that they can figure out videos and show it videos, tell it that this is the ideal video if you're a mechanic, because ours is aviation.
Mhm.
So if they're doing some mechanic maintenance in aviation and say they forgot a wrench in the cockpit or something they moved out, then it can immediately snap the picture and send it to you and say, it looks like something is wrong here, it looks like you have left something here. Without knowing what it is, it kind of, so that's what now they are investing more on. So we can visually and with sounds and pictures.
Hey, no bad. Thank you. Website design. They're getting this one site called The Grid, which they're using AI in certain areas to automate web design. A lot of the design, I noticed, they're Photoshop type sites. You know, when they take the Photoshop and then you slice it up, and then put it online, instead of from going from client brief straight into, let's say, WordPress or a static site or however the client wants it. Predictive customer services. USAA with Saffron Internet. Now, in this little one here, this little thing, the small print, you got the associative memory, contextual reasoning, and autonomous learning. And on this side, the machine learning and these empirically driven, complex varied data, and high accuracy on sparse data. So how that is kind of getting together so that get better customer service. Ad targeting, programmatic advertising. My example is Target. Does everybody know the story about the big one in Target, where there's a 15-year-old girl, she's sitting at the computer, and she's looking at some material, and her dad walks by, and her dad isn't looking at the material, he's looking at the ads that surround the material. And the ads are all baby. It's all baby stuff. And so he completely freaks out. He freaks out. This is a 15-year-old daughter. What is this company doing by pitching my daughter on baby stuff at the age of 15? And he got lawyers, and he was going to sue, and so on. Well, guess what? The AI figured out before he did that his daughter was pregnant, based on her purchases, based on what she was looking at. And so the father had to withdraw and just say, he was told, yes, she is pregnant. That's why it came up. Yeah.
It's just fine with the motion for stretch marks and some bigger.
No, she was looking at. I think it was about the.
Well, they had identified a pattern
Mhm.
for expecting mothers, and then I found the same pattern in her purchases and did the ad injection, and that's the dad freak, but a lot of other people have noticed the the creepy
You're being
injection
stalked by an ad? I swear to God, you're being stalked by an ad?
They don't like the stalking thing, so Target has intentionally started to include, not particularly targeted ads in there to leaven the effect. So
Amazon, I bought Nikon, professional camera through Amazon, and I bought lenses and stuff. And yet they started pitching me Canon stuff. I know that they're want me to switch, but I would think, wouldn't they want to pitch me more Nikon accessories? Get me to buy more Nikon stuff?
If Canon buys more ads, no. But yeah, I look at one thing and suddenly ads for that stuff and their competitors are all over the internet or whatever.
Yeah. But this is really a big issue. This programmatic advertising. You're talking, there's a lot of people just talking about it all the time. So and because the advertisers are saying, well, we want results. You want results. You don't know what 50% of the stuff, which 50% of the stuff works and what doesn't work. But here they're getting closer to the results. So I think they're still going to continue with it. Speech recognition, Skype translator, Siri, Cortina, Baidu, and it's particularly in the Chinese market. The keyboard, we have to type small and intricate characters. And then you get the additional thing of simplified versus traditional, depending on where you are. So that's where most of the speech recognition is really money's being spent in the energy. Image recognition, Google Photos, Snapchat, Face Swap. But the coolest one is from Do-Light, from Baidu. And what it does is that for the visually impaired, as you're going down the street, it'll describe everything to you and tell you what's going on. Pretty good news. The Internet of Things, wearables, smart home, video and images, two takeaways for me were the data collection, which is user behaviors and transactions, and channel optimization, where you have great UX and UI with measurement and testing. That's great. And this is the Your MD doctor diagnosis on Messenger by Snapchat. This came out roughly, I think this came out 4 months ago. So now you can. Yeah, this is getting quite interesting, because what it answers is that you get your 3 fundamental health questions. Okay, whenever you go to the doctor, what's wrong with me? What's the most likely? How do you fix it? And what do you got? What do you got? And of course, the 5 key areas of where this is happening is prescriptions, mental health, telemedicine. Does everybody know what telemedicine is? Telemedicine is where you're in ICU. You're in ICU, and they would have a doctor off in another room. And if something went wrong, let's say 3 o'clock in the morning, they wake up the doctor. They're not doing that anymore. They're not having a doctor there. What they're doing is that they'll have a physician who usually has either a phone or an iPad mini, because they fit into lab coats, and the nurse will have an iPad, usually the 9.7 inch iPad, and what they start doing is teleconferencing FaceTime. So there is no doctor on site anymore. Just something I just let you know. It started to happen in the Dallas area last year. getting specialist services from the National Health Services. So that's an immediate giveaway that they rolled this out in Britain, in the United Kingdom. And it's integrating with other self-care apps. And of course, the access, these are what they have. You can get access through the Samsung S Health. It's on 400 million Android phones. So that's a lot of access. And the last part of my presentation is how to do AI. You want to get into this? Let's start off with the out-of-the-box solutions. I personally like IFT. If this, then that. A couple others are Zapier and Scribe. The example that I have here is the customer relations, CRM is customer relations system, and I know what the name is.
Customer relationship
Management. Yeah. System with analytics or mailing tool. So it makes the marketing person and salesperson. And in the little photo here, you can tell who the bot is and who the real person is. You go, hey, I want to order some sushi. Hey, Jimmy, would you like to come by or have it delivered? Want it delivered? And he says, sure. What do you want? Where do you want it delivered to? That's the bot actually speaking back to us. Okay, so simple interactions. They're pretty easy to do.
Good.
Algorithms.
Could you go back? Yeah, so for the first one, you make an example for that?
With IFT?
Yeah.
One of the recipes which I use for IFT is if a web developer position comes up on Craigslist, send me an email. So I have all these emails of developer, and I kind of see what's going on because there's a certain level. You get the enterprise level, which go through usually recruiters, but then you get the entrepreneurial level, and that's how they usually do it. They usually do through stuff through Craigslist. Cool. Let's see here. Oh yes, and I'm in the process of learning how to build a Slack bot, but I haven't gotten to the finish line. So this guy, he had built, his name is Russell Miller of Miller Media Group, and he built one in 30 days. There were 6 takeaways that he mentioned. Lesson number 1 is pick a platform that is easy. Of course, the most popular one is Node. I guess quite a few of you have worked with Node. Yeah, Node's the main one. Go is a pretty good one too. It's not as popular as Node. And then, of course, we have Rails. Use a bot as a service platform. It's a BaaS. The one that he found was the best was Mia.ai. It has a free online editor. Supports Messenger, and they do Slack contact. Whenever you need support, you just go on Slack, boom, they're always there. As a side note with Slack, right now they're having, with South by Southwest, with the submissions for the speakers, they're having a vote. They've opened it up so that a certain percentage of people from outside can vote. And one of our members, Ken Tabor, he has a presentation for South by Southwest. So if you're ever on Slack, just look out for him and vote for him. Now, when you start getting deeper into this particular AI, it's a simple market language of states and flows. They'll also have, I think the next stage is roles. They'll also have roles. But we say that they have a pretty basic workflow. Pretty basic, it's pretty easy. Number 3, your platform dictates your distribution, your capabilities. So, with all the integration that's going on, if you use a BAS, an API, you can integrate directly into the text with SMS, Slack, Facebook, WhatsApp, etc. They're all open. Buttons beat AI. Why do you think buttons beat AI?
Because they press the button before people.
They get immediate response. They get immediate response with the button. You say, oh yeah, button, click. The response. Don't have to wait for anything. But this little quip here, yeah, it's not the reason people use bots. They use bots because messaging can be faster and simpler experience than going through a new website or downloading yet another app.
So Amazon Dash is a better choice.
Yeah.
Well, so isn't just interactive AI, exposed AI, it's exposed logic as opposed to hidden logic, where whatever purchases you make determine what happens next in the workflow, triggers this, triggers that, as opposed to going interactively back and forth that leads you down a decision tree for the AI. I mean, it's more magical to me if it's just doing it in the background. I don't even know it's doing it.
Yeah. And the thing about the messaging apps, why they're really popular right now, is the retention rate, is the stickiness. Because a person is more liable to use a messaging app. And I think the numbers are, the second use, 68% of people will use it a second time, as opposed to an application, to let's say a mobile app, where it's 38%. So you almost get double the rate. So that's another big thing that took away. Oh yes, the interaction is the UX. And I made sure that I put this little UX, the difference between UX and UI. It's always the user experience. We know that whenever we do anything in the background, once they push that button, or once they're in their app, if nothing happens within 3 seconds, guess what? It's a 50% chance they're gone, right? So it's like, yeah, that's a large part of UX is that speed, personalization, knowing the user's intents, and of course having graphics. So the UX here, kind of a little cloudy. It's interaction design, wireframes and prototypes, information architecture, user research, and scenarios. Whereas the UI, that's where you get the, you use the graphics, topography, colors, and layers. So on that side, I think most people are a little more definitely into UX. So the interaction is the UX. So that works. And you can use reusable patterns. So in other words, the code is not really a big code database, right? But the really good thing about it is that you can always reuse what you use. it's not something that's necessarily visible. It's like a steak, but you don't have to have the sizzle to sell it. And then 6A is test, test, test. Oh, I just remembered something about this one. The reusable patterns. A lot of this is sort of like, there's a music analogy for this. And the music analogy is this. It's like the rock band that has to do the acoustic set. You can't hide behind anything. You know what I mean?
What? Yes.
A rock band, you know how they have a rock band and they have the pyro, they have the light show and the guy leaping across the stage and all of that, and all the theatrics. And when you're putting together a chatbot, it's more like you have to do an acoustic set where you might have just 5 chairs or 4 chairs around in a circle, and you have your guitars, you might have your upright bass, and you're playing. There's nothing really distracting, it's really stripped down. And little 6A is test, test, test. There is an Amazon's Mechanical Turk service, and so when you're testing out your bot, this is a way in how you can get a user group to actually, so someone will test it, they'll tell you what it is. And so on this side, this is for if you're building a bot. However, the other side of the coin is that there are people who know how to test the AI. And so if you know how to test the AI, you can make some money through this as a side gig. Either that or just to test. But they also are looking for people. Okay, and then we start getting into some of the other AIs. This is WIT. This is about turning speech or text into actionable data. It has 2 main elements when you set up your app: intents and entities. And so it has a definition of each one of those, what an intent is, what an entity is, and then what the object does. And then also down here, you'll find the languages. And so for our HTML5 group, see it's Node.js. Node.js is probably the leading technology. And what's coming up now? I noticed that in the last 6 months. They're all using Node. This one happens to have a JavaScript plugin for front-end developers, so I mean, it's a.
How can we use that? How can we use that with the
Oh, just put in address. And you take that.
So we can download that?
Yeah, you can do. Yeah, it's how you can get the AI through their website. It has all the information. Web.ai. API.ai. You can go there directly to, this is their front page, and speech interface, intelligent speech interface for apps, devices, and web. And this one has the similar capabilities, uses intents and entities, and it's also free to use. And the SDKs, of course, again, Node and JavaScript. It can be integrated with Echo and Cortana. Jasper. Jasper's one for the Raspberry Pi, and that one runs on Python. I could see this always on control, voice controlled applications. The one thing that I can kind of see, especially with the Raspberry Pi, is where you get into the smart home. The smart home doesn't really have a brain per se, a central brain. Everything is like, it's like the Internet of Things. And that's where you can see the Raspberry Pi coming in.
In graduate or undergraduate university, was back in Texarkana. We had over the Tim Caswell, who was like #3 Node.js developer. It was like the dumbest smart building there ever. Stuff kept, it reacted, but it was not coordinated. Just getting them into the room where we could have the presentation, there was a thing, and they done, you know, like you close both doors, you know, like the lights would go out a few minutes later, which was okay for a projector thing, but then you couldn't get them. You have to like open the door to crazy stuff.
Clarify is another one. This one is for image and video. It's the one he has. It's a recognition technology. Has a deep learning engine in it. And this one works off the REST API. And of course, once more. Yeah, Node. And it's free up to 5,000 uses a month, which isn't bad. You get traction after 5,000. And this one, fancy hands. Okay. It claimed to be the most powerful API ever, but it hasn't been substantiated yet. So, a bit of marketing in there. And what fancy hands is a little bit of expose what M is. Because M is both artificial intelligence and a team of human helpers to train the system. They have the same thing. And once more, Node.js. So it's pretty safe that if you know a lot about Node, you can pretty well dive right in, right back in. Go. This one also has Go and PHP, which is still in the technology. And that's it. It's my little survey so far, and hopefully next time I'll be able to tell you a lot more about the Slack bot. I'd like to Slack putting that together. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.